the show this week is it too late to become a good table tennis player? This week we have Brian Berry on the show, a man who started playing table tennis at the age of 17 but progressed to become the Australian over 40 and over 50 men's singles champion and has reached the last 16 at 3 World Veterans Championships in 3 separate age groups.
But before we get to that, let's have a look at our regular segments, Tip of the Week, the Drill of the Week, and the Tournament Wrap.
Well, it's interesting to hear the great man Ma Long, after his win in the World Tour Grand Finals, talking about his experiences during the event. Now, I suppose as the hobby player or even the club player or even the national level player, we often think, oh my goodness, I just can't handle my nerves. Well, here's Ma Long, and this is what he has to say. So he said, I made it through the challenge of Fan Zhendong. I played well at the start, but I did not deal with crucial points well. So, I mean, you know, we see Ma Long play all the time, and boy, it looks like he handles those crucial points really well. But he also says, I think it's common for any athlete to become impatient when you reach match point, and I made that mistake today. This is a guy who won the match. The good thing is I won the 6th. Of course, I feel it was a pity to lose the 5th game with 4 match points on hand. He said, and this is the real tip, I have to control my emotion as much as possible. We often talk to you about your emotional levels and how you can start to think about them and how you can start to control them. So for Ma Long, this is always an issue. For every player, it's always an issue. It's not like that it's only exclusive to club players and once you move on from there, everything is all solved. It's always something that you need to be working on. Your emotional level, your emotional control is a big part of the game. We talk to you about utilising things like your pre-point routine, your simple deep breath that can help you to control that emotional level. So for you and for Ma Long, this is something you always need to be wary of and be working on. For lots of tips about this emotional level and the control, go to the sports psychology section at PingSkills.com and you'll find some really useful information and tips there. Our drill of the week this week is utilising running to help you with your table tennis endurance. Now, running has often been utilised by a lot of the top players. So the Swedes in particular utilise running around 5Ks as a good way of increasing their endurance for table tennis. Why 5Ks? Well, it usually lasts around 20 minutes or so, and it helps you to utilise... How are you going there, Jeff?
Good, thanks.
So Jeff's just been running around beautiful Albert Park Lake here. Now, Albert Park Lake is around 4.7 to 5Ks long, and it's a distance that Jeff has done quite a lot in his playing time. So Jeff, with your running, so what are you aiming to do there with your running?
Just build up my endurance so that I can, perform better over longer periods at tournaments that last, a day or even several days or even up to a week.
Yeah, so the distance that you're running here, I just mentioned that it's about 4.7 to 5Ks.
Yep. There's a 5K loop, but the lake itself's 4.7. Yes, that's a good distance. Quite a challenge.
Yep. And so you said that it helps you to increase your endurance for tournaments, but I mean, table tennis is a sport where really, do you need endurance?
Certainly, especially over longer tournaments, and if you start playing even longer competitions, they can go for like a week or even 2 weeks. So a week-long tournament, if you're playing 3 matches in the morning, 3 matches in the afternoon, 3 matches at night, and then repeating that again, that's a lot of matches. So you certainly do need endurance.
And I suppose with tournaments as well, you're often on the tables warming up, cooling down, those sorts of things. So it's not just your table time playing the matches.
Yeah, true. So even a single day tournament, it is a lot of physical work. So it certainly helps you running to build up that and get your endurance up.
Yep, so our drill of the week this week is to go out and start to do a little bit more aerobic work, some endurance work, some jogging, some bike riding, some swimming. Make sure that firstly you get your health checked out. Make sure that everything's in place first.
Yeah, very important.
And start slowly. Don't go out and run 5Ks tomorrow. Start slowly, build it up, and try to build up to a level where you're increasing your endurance. And always, we say with these sort of things, go and get some advice from your local gym or someone with some experience in this field. You might need to help them as far as giving them the basics of what table tennis looks like, because they might not know that, but get their expert advice, get onto a bit of endurance work, increase your aerobic capacity, and see how well you can improve your performance during a tournament.
Yeah, great tip, Alois. And I particularly like the one about don't just go out and run 5Ks straight up. What's important, and the same with learning table tennis and same with building up your physical activity, is that you do enough that you can keep going the next day. If you're just worn out, do one big run and then you can't do anything for a couple of weeks, it's not helpful. So it's more important to be able to do something that you can keep on doing as a regular thing and it becomes a habit. So yeah, build up slowly. Great tip.
Okay, get out there and increase your aerobic capacity. Bye, Jeff.
It's time for the tournament wrap, and today we're looking at the ITTF World Tour Grand Finals for 2016. They were held in Doha, Qatar, and as always, very exciting table tennis, Alois.
Yeah, so this is a really elite event. So you have to qualify through the World Tour events during the year. So during the year, you build up points in each of the World Tour events, and only the top 16 players can compete.
Yeah, great initiative. I really like the structure of this. Yeah, so you have to compete in the tour events, you get the points like you said, and yeah, it really makes it a really special event.
Yeah, and it's not limited to just 2 players from a country, so again, broadens it out. And, we do talk about this with the Olympics, but World Tour Grand Finals, it's open slather.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Alois, we had the men's singles and women's singles with the big events here.
Yes.
Who were the main contenders?
Well, in the men's, definitely Ma Long was in there.
No Zhang Zique though?
No Zhang Zique. Withdrew with injury, though. He was qualified, but withdrew with injury. Zhu Xin, Fan Zhendong. Ovcharov was in there. Chen Qian An. Yuya Oshima, Matsudaira. So, yeah, all the big names were there.
Yeah, and yes, it could have been 4 qualified. Zhang Zique didn't play from China. So, yeah, like you said, that's unusual in some of these, like Olympics, you're only allowed 2 in the singles.
That's right, yeah. So having 3 Chinese in the men's field makes it interesting. So the draw worked out pretty well for Ma Long. He found that Zhu Xin and Fan Zhendong were in the other half, so they had to face off against each other. In Ma Long's half, he had Mizutani in there. He had Junyang Sik. So I mean, still pretty tough fields. He beat Li Ping in the first round 4-0. Kenta beat Chun Tin Wong, or Wong Chung Tin, who we saw at the Australian Open last time up. So Ma Long cruised through. Well, not cruised to. He beat Li Ping 4-2 in the first round, but then moved on to beat Wong Chung Tin 4-0 in the quarterfinals. Chuan Chi Yuan beat Yuya Oshima. Yuya Oshima's had a pretty good last part of the year.
Certainly.
But Chuan Chi Yuan, he's almost a veteran now, coming through and ousting the young Oshima 4-2. Junyang Sik beat Jun Mizutani. So he beat him 4-3 and 11-9 in the 7th game. So a tough battle there.
Junyang Sik really developing well. We saw him at the Australian Open previously.
Yeah. And he did well at the Australian Open. We were impressed with him, and he had Kim Taek-soo in his corner at that stage.
Yes.
So he's progressing well. On the other half of the draw, Zhu Xin came up against Chen Qian An, beat him 4-0 first up. Muramatsu beat Samsonov 4-3, 11-6, and Samsonov was up 3-2 there. Won the 5th game 11-1. Looked like he was cruising a little bit, but Muramatsu came through. and won that 4-3. Ovcharov beat Peng Tang, and Fan Zhendong accounted for Koki Niwa, the very flamboyant and exciting Japanese player in the first round. So Fan Zhendong up against Ovcharov. That was a biggie in the quarterfinal.
And a good match.
Yep, 4-2 to Fan Zhendong.
Yeah, so, and a couple of close ones. Fan Zhendong taking the third there, 15-13.
Yeah, and Ovcharov winning the first two games. So, really Ovcharov could well and truly have been up 3-0 in that match. But so he'll be disappointed to go down. And Zhu Xin came up against Muramatsu in the quarterfinal, beating him 4-0 and very easily.
Very convincingly.
Yeah. So to the semis, Ma Long faced Jung Young Sik and absolutely took him to... Well, he didn't take him to pieces. I mean, the scores were 9-8, 8 and 14-12 in the fourth game.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm impressed with Jung Young Sik. I think look out for him in the future. He's developing nicely. Yeah,
it could be Korea's answer.
Yes.
And Zhu Xin took on Fan Zhendong in probably the pick of the semis, and Fan Zhendong 4-2. Topsy-turvy match, but Fan Zhendong winning the sixth game 11-9. So taking him there, and then the final between Ma Long and Fan Zhendong. Ma Long winning 11-9 in the sixth game. An interesting match though, Jeff.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Ma Long dominating early, but then had some match points, but had a match point but couldn't convert.
Yeah, so he was up 3-0, lost the fourth game 11-7, had match points in the sixth game, had 4 or 5 match points in the sixth game, couldn't convert, lost 14-12, and then 10-8 up in the sixth game as well, lost the point, and so lost another match point. He would have been starting to get a little bit shaky, but took the game 11-9, so to win 4-2. And Ma Long now winning 5 World Tour finals, way ahead of anyone else. I think the closest is 3 by any other player.
Yeah, so what a year for Ma Long.
Yeah, it has been. So, and then to the women's singles, not as interesting, although Ding Ning going down to Han Ying in the quarterfinals. Han Ying, a chopper from Germany now, then beat Miu Hirano 4-0, and very easily. So Miu Hirano, has been the real standout over the last couple of months, but losing 2-4, 3 and 5 to Han Ying, and then Zhu Yuling in the other side of the draw, accounting for Kazumi Ishikawa 4-0 as well. So set up the final, and the final was interesting enough. I mean, Zhu Yuling ended up winning 4-0, but the first 3 games were 9, 10 and 10. Could have gone either way. Zhu Yuling didn't look totally comfortable when Han Ying was making some attacks, but in the end, Zhu Yuling won the fourth game 11-3 and closed it out to win her first World Tour Grand Final. So interesting event, as I said, a really big event on the calendar because it is the best players in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see. And the Chinese team still dominating.
Still dominating, but good to see some great matches, and that puts an end basically to the World Tour and the ITTF competitions for the seniors for 2016.
Indeed, so that's a wrap. If you get a chance, check out the ITTF YouTube channel. They'll always have some great videos of these events, always worth seeing. And we'll stay tuned for the 2017 World Tour, where we expect to see many more great matches. And now it's time for our interview with the great B. Berry.
We're here today with Brian Berry, one of the absolute legends of Australian table tennis. But it wasn't always the case with Brian. We're very, very lucky to have him here today and to tell us a little bit about his journey in the game of table tennis.
Absolutely, yeah. And we were just reminiscing just a few minutes ago about when he beat me 25 years ago at the Australian Open when I was still an up-and-coming junior, and he put me back in my place. Which he's done to many juniors along the way, I must say.
That's right. It's almost a rite of passage, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But Brian, you didn't start table tennis at a very young age, did you?
I played a little bit casually with, I guess, when my uncle moved to a country town not far from where we were living. That was at Denali in Victoria, and he built a pine board table tennis in the bank. Yeah. So I played with that was my first serious family competition, playing against my father, even my mother briefly, and my uncle. So
you talk about Dunolly. So just give the viewers a little bit of a background. How big are we talking? The town of Dunolly.
Dunolly was a town of about 1,000 people, but in its heyday, it's in the gold mining triangle of Victoria between Ballarat and Bendigo and Maryborough, and not that far from where the most famous gold nugget, the Welcome Stranger, was found. So, yeah, Denali was prime gold mining country. So in its heyday, it would have been much, much, much bigger than that.
Right. So you came from a small town. You started playing, as you say, just on a pine board, pine table. So what lured you in initially to playing the game of table tennis?
I'd already played a lot of tennis, and I guess, so I'm talking 14, 15, and I'd seen my limitations as a tennis player. Much as I wanted to be a good tennis player, I wasn't a very good athlete. And table tennis was just something different that you could adapt in those days with the bats we were using, some of your tennis techniques to table tennis. So just being able to go out and hit a few shots and be competitive with my family members. And then going to Bendigo, doing my first year of tertiary education at the Bendigo Institute of Technology, but dropping a few classes here and there, and going to the YMCA where they had a table tennis table. And
so was that your first experience at a club type situation?
It was just a venue that wasn't too far from the actual, I don't know how we found it, somebody took us there, and I got competitive with somebody that I was in a class with, and so we had some regular hits. And then by the end of the year, I had joined the Bendigo competition in the last season of the year.
So what age are we talking about here?
17.
17. Okay, so 17 years of age. So I mean, nowadays we sort of look at players and think, well, if you start playing at 17, well, do you have a future in table tennis at all?
Yeah, I mean, look at Van Zendong, how young he was to be such a good player. Yeah, so exactly. We often get questions: can people become good? Yeah, if they start older.
Good, it's an interesting word.
It is, isn't it?
I think you can become quite good. And table tennis, I guess, when I came to Melbourne the next year to work in the public service, I went to Albert Park and I saw the smooth rubber bats and the topspin that people were getting on the ball. I thought, this is fantastic. And so I wanted to get a topspin, and that was my motivation to really spin that ball. And so that was 1972, and I've basically kept going ever since.
So sorry, Brian. So what type of bat were you using in your startup in
Bendigo? I think it might have been a Barner, pimples outwards, but brown coloured.
No sponge.
I have a vague feeling it had some sponge underneath.
Right. Okay, so a very basic bat. Learning the basic skills.
That's correct.
Yep. So that topspin you said you really that's the stroke that really captured your imagination. What was it about the topspin? Was it?
Coming into Melbourne and I guess seeing the ball, and it's the word we use sometimes, dip.
Right.
Yeah, seeing the ball dip and land on the table and then kick on. I said topspin. If I can make some of those, that'll be pretty good.
It is a good stroke, isn't it? That's like one of the first shots that captures most people's. I think it's the same for me. Just being able to see that ball dip and be able to hit the ball so fast and it kick on, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and it's something that you don't get in tennis that you had played previously.
Well, not in those days anyway. These days, the young guys put huge amounts of topspin on the ball.
Yes. Yeah. So you came down to Melbourne. You saw table tennis at a higher level. So that really captured your imagination. So where did you go with your table tennis from there?
I lived, after a very short period, I lived in Albert Park, and I was down the centre 3 or 4 nights a week. Maybe I was still going home to the country on weekends. And whilst I was still under 19, I managed to play a few junior events, but with no real success. But then started to work my way through the grades of pennant that they used to have at the old Albert Park Centre, which was a very big venue, as you know, and they had probably about 50 grades. It seems hard for us to believe now, but 50 grades of competition played home and away. Most of it at the old Albert Park venue, but you'd go to places all over Melbourne. But Melbourne was easier to get around.
Right. So having that large competition and I suppose having a correct level for you to step into was important. You said in your tournaments though, under 19 level, you had very little success initially.
That's right. I was just learning.
Yeah. Okay. So that finding that, I suppose for us it's a club type situation or a competition type situation where you can fit into was important. So then, did you see a sudden increase in ability? Did it take a long time?
After 4 years, I went on the spectators tour to the Commonwealth Championships in Guernsey, well, nearly for 4 and a little bit of years anyway, and to the World Championships in Birmingham. And I felt at that stage I'd trained very hard, but I wanted to get overseas and see something and see more. But I had put in really intensive 4 years, of amateur effort, you'll call it, in getting myself coached, and I thought my improvement was really quite high at that stage in the off-season comp. I was playing A grade for the first time, and I was close to leading player. And I was in the grand final of the championships of that season. They had an individual event as well, so I never got my name on the board though.
So in those 4 years though, Brian, you said you trained fairly hard. Can you give us a bit of an indication, so what sort of hours a week or how many hours a day, or what are we talking about there?
Probably as my parents, my father finally retired and went around Australia, so I didn't go home on the weekends, so I spent more time in Melbourne, and so it involved weekends training as well. So I imagine I was hitting at least 5 days a week, an average 2-hour session, and sometimes doubling up, maybe two sessions in one day.
Yeah, I guess it's important, isn't it, to put the effort in to actually see the progress.
Yes, you'd have to say that. You have to have a focused, guided effort. Sometimes you can put your effort into things that aren't going to work for you very well. I've wasted a lot of time along the way as well.
So what was the quality of your training partners at that stage?
Mostly my peers, people who are about my standard or marginally better, or sometimes you improved a little bit more than they did and you went ahead of them, but they kept training, they caught back up with you. I still look for a variety of players. I like to try and get a chopping player to play against to improve my topspin. So a variety, a few favourite practice partners, mostly about the same level as me, but who are seeking to improve themselves.
Yeah, so a good training environment for you was pretty important then, do you think, as far as your development at that stage?
Yes, well, it didn't occur to me how hard it might be for some people to get a good training environment, because there seemed to be plenty of people who wanted to improve themselves.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good situation, isn't it?
Yeah. So then you mentioned going to the Commonwealth Championships and World Championships. Was that 77?
It was
77 in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Was there anything there that caught your eye?
Well, the Australians had a fantastic tournament at the World Championships. I guess they only ranked 50 in the world then. I guess we thought that Steve Knapp was very close to being ranked.
Sorry, they ranked 50 players.
Yeah, in the world. And we thought he was, just about. Not that I had a really informed opinion, but his level was very high. His footwork was outstanding. It was an amazing tournament to be at, to see Yonya, who was a hero for all the white players in the world, I guess. Non-Asian players. The Asians had dominated everything for so long. Admittedly, Bengston had a breakthrough in '71, but to see Yonya with his combination of weightlifting and ballet playing table tennis, it was just, he's so strong and so athletic and doing things that other players didn't do. And the Chinese came to Birmingham and did things they hadn't done before, and Yonya countered it. It was just amazing.
So I heard it described that, at that stage that it was easier to be on the next court to get back Yonya's shots because of the amount of topspin on the ball dipping off the table and really scooting off. Is that how it felt when you were there? It's something that I've only seen a little bit of on video, but how did it feel when you were there?
Well, the next court maybe for the side spin as well. I guess that's when we saw the introduction of the side spin looping, and we saw the Chinese players coming out and doing high toss serves on the inside of the ball, the ball curving across the table, and Yonya playing backhands. A precursor of the modern game. Just amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and I suppose in those days you didn't have the opportunity to watch videos of international players, so this was really your only opportunity to see the best players in the world?
That's pretty much so. There was a very good film after the '77 Worlds, maybe called Win with Spin, just showing how much spin and how much effect the spin was having. And it's fluctuated since then, some degrees of speed and spin, and sometimes the rubber manufacturers have got it wrong and they tried to make it all speed and the players wanted more spin. And it is all about the power now, but still, that was very interesting to see. The Win with Spin, and there's a Battle of the Bats film as well. And to see the defensive players too, that was just...
That was on the old Super 8 or the 16mm film or something?
I could not be sure, but I'm sure the Table Tennis Victoria, the VTTA as it was then, would have played them for its members at some stage.
That's right. So really limited opportunity in those days to see the best players in the world, but you've had that opportunity at the World Championships in '77. So after that, what changed in your training? Did anything change in your game?
I wanted more. I wanted to be better. No, I can't say that I can remember bringing home a conscious thought about doing this. Mm-hmm. That I just spent 2 years in England. I exposed myself to some different club experiences and different players and maybe some different coaching philosophies. So I just broadened my background of experience, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when I came back to Melbourne, I thought perhaps I can learn more about my own table tennis by learning about coaching as well. So I was in the early '80s that I signed up for the coaching and started coaching, alongside Igor at Albert Park.
Okay, so you're talking about Igor Klaf, one of the Russian coaches that moved over here at that stage.
That's right.
I think it's interesting when you see the top players. I kind of find that it does help motivate you to want to be better, like you said. But I also think it's kind of interesting to watch people live because you're kind of like, well, if they can do it, surely I can pick up some of the things that they can do as well.
I don't know if I ever had that much confidence in myself.
Okay.
Unlike Jeff. Yes. So now you're in your early 20s, Brian, and so what were your results like? Where were you, say, nationally or at a competition or a pennant or fixtures type of level?
Times and dates and...
Yeah, they all tend to merge into each other, right?
Well, once the winter competition, the Table Tennis Victoria winter competition at the old centre was still the strongest in Australasia. People had previously in the '70s been coming to Melbourne to be in that environment. So, when I said I didn't look for anywhere else because it was the strongest in Australia. New South Wales had some things, but the Melbourne scene was strong. New Zealanders came across to Melbourne, Queenslanders came down to Melbourne, even ACT people came to Melbourne.
Even ACT people.
And so I was playing A grade in the minor seasons, and in the winter season I might have been doing a combination of A2 or filling in a fourth player, four-man team in the strong teams. And I was playing all the tournaments I could play, country tournaments and the Melbourne tournaments, and winning sometimes in the graded events. I was,
So at that stage, so early to mid 20s now, what were your goals? Are you thinking that you're going to be world champion? Are you thinking that you're going to be Australian champion? Are you thinking, or where were you heading with your table tennis?
Probably my goals were a bit more non-specific, just to keep improving. So I didn't set goals as such like that. I just said I can still get a little bit better, I can play a bit better, I can be more competitive. And so in 1985 I went to Queensland when the first Chinese coach to coach in Australia on a full-time basis, Mr. Chen, was appointed to coach Mackay. And he'd been out in Australia, I think on a tour with Chow Lan Sun as well. And I'd seen him, really seen him, taking a big notice of him at the Commonwealth Games in '77 in Guernsey, where he just played unbelievable table tennis to make the semi-final, saved so many match points against Kitano, with his favourite little high toss Chinese choppy serve, and he flat hit the ball more than toss spun it.
So he was playing for Hong Kong.
He was playing for Hong Kong at that time, and he saved match points in the third, five in a row, boom, 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 and in the fifth he found himself 15-20 down, and saved 3 in a row before Kitano finally got a different play on the ball, and he controlled Kitano's play and then went on to win the match, and he was forced to lose in the semi-final to his Hong Kong chopper Long Pimple teammate, because Long Pimples were relatively new on the scene, and the Hong Kong hierarchy, thought it was much better for the chopper to play the English wonder kid Andrew Barton.
Right. Okay. So
Mr. Chen made a big impression with his play, and when he was coaching in Mackay in Queensland, I thought I might go up there. I knew one of the players from Mackay already, who'd been in Melbourne for years, John Cooney, and so I went to Mackay.
So for the viewers, from Melbourne to Mackay isn't a 1 hour drive, Brian. How many hours by plane to get to Mackay?
By plane, well, you have to stop in Brisbane. So it's like a 2.5 hour flight to Brisbane, another 1.5 hour flight to Mackay.
Yeah. So it's quite a few Ks. So it's not like you went up the road to chase your dream of and to find this coach. You really uprooted your life and moved there to do that. What were the pearls that you think that you got from Mr. Chen?
Well, he saw the way I looped the ball. I probably broadened his point of view because he could see the good things I could do, and he wanted to work with those and make me a more strong attacking player. And I knew that athletically, coordination-wise, I probably could not sustain that at a higher level. And I was building in a bit of chop into my game to slow people down and then be able to maybe pick balls off. So he had to come around to that point of view. And interestingly enough too, initially he wanted me to, when I was practicing against the backspin, practicing my backspin, he wanted to give me slow balls, and build up my consistency, and I needed faster balls. If I could get the faster balls back, I felt I could get the slower balls back. So it was interesting that we came at it from, with all this experience, we still came at it from different viewpoints. But I did see his coaching. I thought his coaching of a Mackay team, who had never won the Queensland Championships. In those days, it was a really, really big event, and Mackay dominated by the Brisbane teams. And Mackay had never won it, and we did win it a couple of years in a row. I went away, probably number 4 player in the Mackay team, and in 1985 to the week-long event of the state closed championships. And I thought at that time the event was so intense that it was like a little extra bonus mini Australian for the Queensland players, and gave them, some better match play than you might get in a lot of events. And I went away as number 4 player in the Mackay team, and then went to the Australian in the Queensland team. So, but yeah, so we've seen those sort of things happen because people not knowing how you're playing or style, or that you developed from other areas.
So let's talk a little bit about your style, Brian. So it's certainly not a textbook style of play. So you mix defence with attack, but I suppose the biggest part of your game is just the amount of spin that you use on all of your shots, both with the defence and with your topspin. So was that inspired early on? You talked about when you first came down to Melbourne, you saw spin. When you went to the World Championships, you saw Yonya, or was it something else that?
If you spun the ball enough, maybe they couldn't handle it. Mm-hmm. So if I was in trouble and I pushed the ball hard enough, they weren't going to attack me and surprise me. After all this time, I can honestly state that I still have never learned to really see what my opponent's doing. Occasionally you have good days where you do see more clearly what is happening. So for a person who's not too fast to begin with, I haven't helped myself. So I wanted to control things by spinning the ball. So I controlled it with heavy spin, and I still primarily play all the long pimple players by giving them more backspin than they used to on the average push, and they miss a few, and then you give them a variation and they can bump it off. So yes, so the spin was to control things and give myself time.
Yeah, so your forehand topspin, Brian, is very unique. As we talked about, the amount of spin that you get on all of your shots. But for me, that forehand topspin is something different. So where did you get that?
When I came to Melbourne, the very first year at the old Albert Road Centre, Australian Championships, and I saw a very famous Australian player of the day who never perhaps fulfilled his potential. Peter Powell was his name, and one or two of the Victorians had tried to copy him as well, and we had what we call a whippy loop, very wristy, very fast. And when I saw Peter Powell playing Pinkovic,
There was a chopper.
There was a chopper, very famous defender, and maybe I was inexperienced. When he stepped around the backhand corner to hit that forehand, I didn't see the ball. Yep. His motion with that whippy, wristy stuff was so fast, and indeed, that's 1972. 3 years later, Stepancic was runner-up in the World Championships with a similar left-hand wristy, whippy loop, and very similar lazy game to Peter Powell's. So I was impressed by these guys, the amount of work they got on the ball. And then the person who beat Yonya in Birmingham, Birashow, he also had a whippy loop. So
another left-hander?
No, he was right-handed.
He was a right-hander.
Yeah. So we were so disappointed to see Yonya lose. But Birashow himself was exciting in that way. So those guys influenced me.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is a unique shot these days. Do you think that it's still got potential for modern players?
Never say never.
Yeah, true.
But well, we see players, playing this backhand side spin over the table, And Yonya was doing a version of that, as I say, in this teams events at the 77 Worlds. So sometimes you've got to go backwards to see what people have done in the past to go forwards. Yeah.
So the other impressive shot that I see from you is your chop, but the side spin chop. Perhaps not, you don't use it so much these days, but I think in the 90s or 80s and 90s you really brought that stroke to fame.
Yeah, I was practicing with an American player, John Tannehill, who didn't hit any very, very powerful balls. He'd give me soft, safe, spinny balls, and I would find the ball down the floor near my feet. And I just discovered by exaggerating my follow through and maybe getting on the side and underneath the ball, I could get the ball up from those positions and get more chop on it. So that was my own, just through right of practice and different styles. There was something that worked for me at that time. Perhaps I moved better in those days.
Yeah, so there's this one that you do to me, Brian, that comes with so much side spin and it seems to shoot off at the wrong way. Do you have any idea how that works?
Can you let us in on some of those secrets now, Brian? Because
I push it and it spins off the wrong way. It's so spinny.
Well,
it was said that people were just hitting the ball into the side window when you played that shot at some times, and it was true. The amount of side spin and backspin that you used to generate on that, and people now talk about the corkscrew spin, and I think that is probably a little bit about what you were doing. The ball was almost rotating. As it like a corkscrew going at the person.
Yeah, if you play with good players enough, they adapt to anything. Mm-hmm. Yes. So some of the people you're coaching, and especially the veterans and the pimple players, and they pull their hair out because their game works against somebody and it doesn't work against somebody else. But if it doesn't work against somebody else, they have to have some better basics in some of their, techniques with the smooth rubber, presuming they are, so yes, Jeff, if you kept playing my side spin, backspin chop, I'm sure you'd be able to push it on the table whenever you wanted. If I could still get it on.
Sure. Excellent. Sure. So Brian, you then moved on and you became a regular A-grade pennant player and a strong A-grade pennant player. And again, you were definitely down at the hall more than most other players. So that continued practice, that single-minded focus of improvement, I think was really one of the key things that kept you going.
I guess it was, and you can guess that I never got married. So there you go.
So I was speaking to Richard Lee in an interview years ago, and he said, I asked him what's the biggest tip he's got for players, and his tip was don't give up too early. He says he often sees players come through and they'll get to 18 and they'll quit, and they could be just around the corner from a big improvement. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, because sure, there's a lot of things going on in life and you didn't quite achieve your hopes as a junior, and there's pressures and study and just getting on to live in the world, maybe away from the family home. But absolutely, you haven't capitalised on all that work you've done yet, for sure, in many instances. I can hardly remember an Australian junior going on to be Australian senior champion. The number in the last 20 or 30 years is very small.
Sure. So then, Brian, you did move on, and I think you said in 1993 was another turning point for you when you turned 40. So
that's right. I became a veteran. The veterans have been going about 11 or 12 years. Your mother, of course, was one of the founding members.
That's right. Still playing them.
That's right. And yeah, I said I want to be in that, and played. And so I've played the Australian Veterans Championships every year since. Although although sometimes I swear I wonder why.
Why is that, Brian? Frustration or?
Yeah, at the end of the week, you say, hey, can I go through this again?
In what way? Is it the emotional, the physical?
Combination. But also at the end of the week, like these days the event's so big that you are potentially playing 8 days in a row if you get through to the following Saturday in the individual finals. So there's only a select number of people who are actually going to win.
Yeah.
Because some people can come out and play really strong and put their all into it, but the style of their game and their bodies just won't allow them to play the following Saturday morning. They just can't get through. And the setup today as well with the Friday is just a killer day, absolutely. So if you're not playing well on the Friday, you're almost inclined to say, I don't mind if I can sit down and relax and have a drink on Saturday. I don't mind. That's a rationalisation. You still prefer to try and win something, but
So Brian, again, you've had some really good success in the National Veterans Championships. What for you is the highlight of your veterans tournaments?
I think New South Wales were the dominant team in the over 40s for years, based around Pinkovic and some other strong defensive players, David Beaumont and Samuelson. And when I came back to Melbourne, I played my first 2 years for Queensland and got a few bronze medals. But we came back to Melbourne in '95, and the event was in Melbourne, and we played New South Wales on the table 21 at the old centre, and managed to record a team victory. So that was and the first time that I'd ever beaten Pinkovic.
There you go.
So, and I just, there's probably probably the most focused match of my life that I can remember.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that team success was fantastic. So what year was that? Sorry.
1995.
95. So yeah. So just a couple of years after playing the vets.
Yep.
So then, what about individual success at Veterans Championships?
Yes, the next year we went to Adelaide and stayed at a friend's place. Maybe it was good karma for me because I was staying there again 9 years later when I won the over 50s. But in 1996, I won the over 40 men's singles. So that was the biggest thing I'd ever won at that stage.
Yeah. So
Bringing the team in there. So over 40s and over 50s national champion. That must have made you feel pretty proud.
It was, well, yes. If I hadn't been confident enough to vocalise my goals or aims, I guess by the time I came to Veterans, that was my aim, was to try and win an Australian Veterans title.
Yeah. So your first, the over 40s title, what year was that again?
96 in Adelaide.
6. So you started playing in?
72.
72. So it's 24 years, right?
It's a long road.
It is a lot, and it is a long road, and I think that's really interesting because, as we talked about a little bit earlier, Richard Lee said to us that players do give up too early. Sometimes it takes 24 years to achieve something really big in your career, but yeah.
Well, maybe it's trite, how can you sum up a mission statement? But the mission statement for Table Tennis Victoria is a game for life. And as a person who coaches table tennis and who gets frustrated by his inability to do things, but at the same time, there's so much empirical and anecdotal evidence about table tennis being really good for you. So physically and mentally, absolutely. The decision making involved and just where is the ball going, even if it's almost subconscious, becomes subconscious. Where is the ball going? Where have I got to be? What's the spin on it? Which complicates the issues. Um, Table tennis, has been shown in Japanese studies to involve more areas of the brain at any one time than I think any other sport.
So, Brian, you've now, I suppose, achieved your big goals. You've won national veterans singles titles. You've won national teams titles. Why are you still playing?
Every really bad loss, I ask myself the same question.
Yes. There must be something. There must be a spark there that still keeps you coming down to the hall, keeps you entering those tournaments.
Yeah, well, I'm just heavily involved in table tennis, coaching, which is also very frustrating sometimes, but sometimes it's rewarding. And perhaps, I feel it helps my position as a coach if I'm still achieving as a player. Sometimes, I look at where I am in life, and I definitely have some questions about how come this is it. But it's a healthy lifestyle. I've always argued, and I've got no reason to go against that when I see myself compared to some other people. So occasionally I maybe see myself as a little bit of a role model of activity, and my activity is table tennis more than other things, although I still do play tennis and I will be playing a little bit of summer golf, but table tennis is number one.
Absolutely. So how old are you now, Brian?
Very. 63.
63. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone would agree you're very young looking 63. So, I mean, we often say to some of our readers that, table tennis is a game you can play for life, as you just said. Can you be playing in the over 80s? Can you be playing that long into your life?
Don't ask me at the wrong time.
What would you say today, Brian?
It's very possible.
Yeah. So that's great, and I think a real inspiration to players that are starting at an older age. I mean, we talk about players starting at an older age being 17, but that was many years ago for you, Brian. So you've been able to, from 17, learn the game, give yourself time to learn the game, give yourself time to improve and achieve a lot of the things that you have achieved in the game. Is there any one pearl of advice that you could give our readers that are, they may be 15, they may be 16, they may be 17, they may be in their early 20s, or and just starting to learn the game in the office, and it's a game that now has captured their imagination. Is there anything that you would say to them?
Wow. It's so subjective, but table tennis is so experiential, and to approach it with an open mind and get out there and play as many different people as you can, because everybody's doing something slightly different, and the way some players play you might never have seen before. So if you haven't played them, your mind is racing and you just can't play your own game. So the more experience you get, the more chance you have.
Well, thank you, Brian, for joining us today and just sharing some of your experiences, and I think hopefully inspiring some of those players out there that are starting perhaps at an older age, of 15, 16, 17, 20 or whatever it is, that table tennis is a game for life, and if you can experience enough, you can certainly achieve a lot with the game of table tennis.
Yeah, look, that would be really nice if somebody saw this and was encouraged just a little bit extra to have a, to keep going with an open mind.
Absolutely. All right. So, the great B. Brian Berry, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, PingSkills team.
Thanks so much for watching this week's show. It's brought to you by PingSkills, so make sure you go to pingskills.com and check out all the great tutorials we have on table tennis. Hopefully we can help you improve your game. The music from today's show was Brontosaurus by Topher Moore and Alex Alana from the YouTube Audio Library. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep enjoying your table tennis.